Okay, you're right. Hi again. So I'm going to introduce lesson 4 for you today on the Haitian Revolution scheme of work that you guys are doing. Okay, I'm going to start off with a quick recap today on what you guys did last time because we're going to pick up the story of the Haitian Revolution where we left off last time. Now, if you remember last time, we were looking at the social structure in Saint-Domingue, what became Haiti later, when the French Revolution began. Now, if you remember, we looked at this racial hierarchy idea, right? So hierarchy, a system of privilege, right, with more people with power at the top, people with less power at the bottom. And we looked at the idea that in Sandeman, the racial hierarchy wasn't as simple as white free people versus black slaves, okay? There were distinctions amongst the slaves. So the people who worked in the fields had the least privilege and were most likely to die from their work up to domestic slaves. Um, and also, we saw that there was this really important middle group in Haiti called the Free Colors, okay, who were these people we saw who were of mixed race heritage, who would often have white French fathers. They'd often be African slaves who had managed to save up enough money to free themselves, which is what happened with Toussaint. Actually, Toussaint was a free colored, even though he was fully African. He'd been able to save up enough money to free himself. So we looked at the idea that Haiti is this really delicate balance between a massive population of 500,000 African slaves working on the on the sugar and coffee plantations. There are 31,000 whites made up of like big plantation owners and then also like poorer whites. And then there's also this population, nearly the same again, of free colors, okay, 28,000 of them, okay? And they were sometimes actually slave owners, even though they would have some African heritage at least. And the free colors would often be slave owners. Toussaint himself was actually a small slave owner. He owned 30, 40 slaves on a small plantation because in that society, it was a slave society. So if you wanted to move up the social hierarchy, you had to own slaves. Now, what we looked at last lesson, if you remember, was we looked at the idea that when the French Revolution began in 1789, it started talking about these ideas of equal rights, things like the rights of man. Um, and those ideas of equality were obviously quite dangerous in a society like Sandaman, which is based upon inequality and racial hierarchy. And you remember we saw that the French Revolution begins in 1789, and we saw particularly that very famous free-coloured Julian Raymond. He went to France and managed to convince the government there, the revolutionary French government, to extend the rights of man to the free-coloured. Okay, now when the French government in Paris ordered that in Haiti the free colours would be given equal rights to the whites on the island, the whites on the island of Sandaman basically rebelled. That was because they, in simple terms, were kind of racist. They didn't want to share power and equality with the free colours, who they looked down upon because of their African heritage. But also, they were worried that if equal rights were extended to free colours, then the next stage would be to extend rights to slaves. And then obviously that would be a big threat to their wealth and their privilege. So after the French Revolution begins, a civil war kind of starts in 1791 between the free coloreds in Haiti, sort of led by people like Raymond, and then against the white sort of plantation owning aristocracy in the island. But what we're going to look at today is very shortly after that civil war starts between the free coloreds and the white population, who are both slave owners, the African slave population begins to get its own ideas about freedom and equality, and they're going to start their own uprising. Now, this picture, we just have a quick look at, we're going to look at this in more detail. So a few things to think about here. So what do you think might be going on in this painting? I'm going to show you the whole picture in a minute. So first of all, where do you think this might be? What do you think this woman here might be doing? What does it look like she's holding here? What are these people down here doing? And then what do you think might be happening in the rest of the image? Just have a close look at that picture for a second. Okay, so if we zoom it out a little bit more now, see a little bit more of the picture. Okay, so you've got a little bit more now. So just think in your head again, what do you think might be going on in this painting? You can see these people around the edge. What does it look like they're doing? So what are they holding in this hand? What are they holding in that hand? What do you think might be going on? Okay, and finally, this is the full image. This is what this is of. Okay, now this is a Haitian painting to commemorate one of the sort of the most important founding moment of the Haitian Revolution, which is called the ceremony of Bois-Caïma. Okay, Bois-Caïma is a sort of on the outskirts of a plantation in southern Haiti, and the ceremony took place on August 21st, 1791. Now, this ceremony was basically when African slaves from lots of the leading plantations on the northern plain of the island, they got together secretly at night to basically make a vow that they would start their own uprising against the French slave owners the following day. So what's happening here is that they are sacrificing a pig. And then basically they are then sharing a bit of its blood each as a kind of it's almost like making a sort of sacred pact, right? Because remember, obviously, if the conspiracy was uncovered, they would all be killed, and if they didn't all rise up at once, it wouldn't work. So in this ceremony, all of the leading slaves from the biggest plantations get together secretly at night while the mixed race people and the white plantation owners are distracted, and they declare that tomorrow we're going to start our uprising against the plantation owners. Okay, so this is almost like the Declaration of Independence for Haiti's slaves, right? That moment in American history where they declare that they're going to be free of the British Empire. This is the equivalent of that. So this is the moment when the African slaves actually enter the picture and say, "We want equality, and we're going to fight against the slave system." Okay, so what we're going to be looking at in today's lesson is we're going to be thinking about the reasons why the uprising of the African slaves was successful in Saint Domingue. Because in lots of other Caribbean slave societies, uprisings had been attempted and they usually failed. But Saint Domingue was unique in that its slave revolution was actually successful. So we're going to look today at what made it successful. And one thing we're going to look at is actually the importance of voodoo. Okay. So your first keyword for today, you might want to make a note of, okay, is voodoo. So what is voodoo? Okay. Voodoo in Haiti is actually just a religion made up of lots of different African spiritual beliefs. Okay. Remember that the slaves in Haiti were kidnapped from lots of different parts of Africa. They spoke different languages. They had different cultures. And voodoo almost became this like religion that was almost like a glue that tied them together. It was a mix and match of different African spiritual beliefs. And it kind of gave them a sense of unity to fight against the slave owners. Okay, this quote here is from the person who led that ceremony. You can see in this picture here is commemorated. There's a guy called Dati Boukman. Okay, now Dati Boukman was had actually been a slave in Jamaica originally, and he was shipped over to Saint Domingue, and he became a voodoo priest. Okay, so he became like a leading exponent of the voodoo religion in Saint Domingue, and he used this ceremony to call on his fellow slaves to reject the god of the white slave owners and to unify to fight against slavery. Okay, and you can see a statue of Dati Boukman in Haiti today to commemorate him and this ceremony. Okay, so what does Boukman say in this ceremony? He says, "Our God, who has ears to hear, you are hidden in the clouds, who watch us from where you are. You see all that the white man has made us suffer. The white man's God asked him to commit crimes, but the God within us wants us to do good. Our God, who is so good, so just, he orders us to revenge our wrongs. It's he who will direct our arms and bring us victory. It's he who will assist us. We all should throw away the image of the white man's God, who is so pitiless. Listen to the voice for liberty that speaks in all our hearts." Okay, so he says that they need to avenge the wrongs of the slave system. I think it's interesting that he says that he orders us to revenge our wrongs. And I think what he kind of means by that is the fact that we have been allowed ourselves to be enslaved in some level. And he's basically calling on their gods to give them victory against the whites in this slave uprising. Okay. Now, you've got two quick videos you're going to watch after this lecture, which are just below in the playlist. So they're going to be 4.2 and 4.3. The first one is about what was liberating about voodoo. And one of the guys in the short clip talks about this idea that it freed the sort of slaves from the prisons of their minds. Okay. It's the idea that like voodoo allows the African slaves to have their own religion and culture, to unify themselves against the slave owners, but it also kind of allows them to think in a way that gives them freedom. Okay. There's a quote here from Laurent Dubois, who's a very famous historian of the Haitian Revolution. Voodoo was a religion that gave a space of freedom in the midst of a world of bondage and helped lay the foundations for the revolt that ultimately brought complete freedom to the slaves. So it's that idea that voodoo is a religion that gives them a space of freedom in the midst of a world of bondage, just meaning slavery. So voodoo was important to the success of the revolution in Haiti because it gave the slaves a space of freedom where they could think in their own ways, where they could organize, and where they could kind of unify different Africans from different parts of Africa with a kind of shared culture. Okay. Now, when that uprising begins, okay, you can probably guess what's going on in this picture here. It's extremely violent. Okay, so the slaves set fire to all of the sugarcane fields and the mills which were used to craft the sugarcane juice because they were trying to destroy the ability of the French. If the French were able to reconquer the island, they wanted to destroy the ability of them to make money from it. So they essentially burn as many of the plantations as they can get their hands on. So they're burning down the sugarcane fields, they're burning the mills, they're burning all the really expensive equipment, and they're also killing as many of the slave owners and their families as they can. So the violence of the Haitian Revolution early on is a really, really important thing. Okay, and in terms of is it justified, it's obviously extremely violent. But if we think back to our second lesson about what slavery in Saint Domingue actually looked like, remember it was so violent that half of the slaves died within 3 years of arriving on the island. The violence you kind of see from the slaves, you can only really understand by understanding how brutal slavery in Saint Domingue was. Okay, so it almost has an equal and opposite reaction in terms of how violent the slaves are when they begin their uprising. Okay, and again, after you finish watching this little video, there is a second clip, 4.3, which is just 2 minutes long, which is about what the early stages of the revolution actually look like. Okay. Now, you just got two things you've got to do for your teachers for Friday. Okay. The first thing is you've got a little worksheet which is attached to here, which is like this one. Okay. Now, these are 9 of the reasons why the slave revolution in Saint Domingue was successful. Okay. So there's 9 different reasons that helped the revolution in Saint Domingue be successful. Now, you've just got to do 2 things with that worksheet. You've got 6 questions to answer, which you can either type up or handwrite and send to your teacher. So you've got 6 questions just based upon the information on that worksheet, which is attached as a PDF. I'll show my homework. So you've got those 6 questions there. Now, once you've answered those 6 questions, what I'd like you to do is you've got your 9 cards here, so 9 reasons why the revolution in Saint Domingue was successful for the slaves. I want you to have a go at, if you've got scissors at home, this would be very easy to do. See if you can print off those 9 cards and create a little diamond 9. Okay, so you're going to rank those cards from the one that you think was the most important reason why they were successful to the least important one. Remember, it's just your opinion. There's not a right or wrong answer in this one. Okay, so out of those 9 ones, which were the most important reasons why the revolution in Saint Domingue was successful, to which were the least important why it was successful? Now, once you've done that, so you've answered those 6 questions, you've organized those cards from 1 to 9, from the most important to the least important, just your opinion. I'd like to also have a go at writing a paragraph explaining the reasons why your top 2 or 3 are there. So which 2 or 3 factors do you think were the most important reasons why the slaves were successful, and just explain why. Okay, so you should end up with those 6 questions answered, and then also a brief paragraph on which of the 9 reasons you think were the most important for the revolution being successful. Okay, so you've just got that to do, and you've got a little quiz like normal to do as well. For Friday, make sure not to do the quiz until you've done the rest of the work, because you won't know the answers and you don't want to guess, you want to actually know the answers. Okay, so make sure that is done by Friday 1 p.m. Okay, and also make sure to watch the 2 videos below. Okay, so 4.2 and 4.3. They're going to give you a really good overview of the ceremony of Wakaima and the impact of the slave revolt. Okay, all right, I hope you're well, you're right. Thank you very much.